Welcome to the Art of Succession podcast with Barrett Young. Join us as we explore the strategies, stories, and insights that shape the journey of leadership transitions and business success. No matter where you find yourself along the journey, this is the podcast where you'll find the tools to make it happen.
They bought everything and everyone. And they said, we're not buying you to gut you. We buy successful companies and try to help them do better. If you got into business, it wasn't so that you could work 90 hours a week and at the expense of your family and friends. Bring in advisors who have been there, who know the journey, who know the ropes.
Welcome back to part 2 of my discussion with Nick Garofalo. If you want to watch part 1, where Nick walks us through the growth and acquisition of his dad's payment processing company, you can find that episode right here. Otherwise, let's get back to the show. Let's talk about the acquisition first. So my understanding is this is a company that had started to acquire a consolidator. They were acquiring other small little payment processors around the country at this point. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So what did your dad get the number he wanted from that was in his head, or did you guys realize it's not going to be that and he's going to have to get it lower? You said you did some prep work to get it up to that number. Talk through a little bit on that for me.
Yeah. So this was the fun part, honestly. So the first real offer that we got, this company, I forget even where they were, maybe New York or something. They reached out to us and asked, basically the terms of their purchase was like, we're going to individually buy your customers. And any customers that don't come over fall off completely. You can't have them, neither can we. And at the end, we'll just set a 2 or 3x of revenue per customer, or whatever the number was. We'll just buy your customers a trailing 12-month revenue or times some multiple. We'll just pick them off one at a time. It was like, that sounds horrible. Oh my gosh. And if I lose my biggest customer, like, we're all hosed.
Would they have been changing the system at that point then, or were they looking to acquire and just move in seamlessly?
No,
it sounds like they would have been changing.
Buy the customers. Yeah. So the customers had to migrate to their new platform.
Make it very difficult. Make it so that most of them don't want to stay, and then not pay for the ones that left. So, yep, yeah, I got you.
It was terrible. So we said a quick no to that, but that was really discouraging because when you're looking for an acquirer and you finally get somebody on the phone and they're like, "Yeah, we want to buy your company." You're like, "What? Oh, this is awesome, cool. Okay, let's talk." And they talk and they outline the worst plan ever, and you're kind of sitting there like with your eyes blinking, like I can't imagine trying to do this, but I'm nervous to turn it down. It feels like your life's kind of hanging in the balance. And then if you have the guts to say no, now you have to wait out however long until the next buyer hears about you and bites, which could be a week, a month, a year, and you just have to keep trucking with your business, hoping that day comes. So that's tough. And my heart goes out to any entrepreneur, any business owner in that position, because I know just the pain of just waiting and waiting. So anyway, mid 2017, we get another call. This is a really solid company. We'd be acquisition number 20. They had plans to go public. And they had done this many times over, and they were quick and efficient, knew exactly what they wanted. They threw out a number with a payout, and I think the combined total kind of got my dad to that number he was hoping for, which is really, really cool. So it was a win-win-win. We started having meetings, started doing due diligence, signed NDAs, and it closed by, I think it was December 1st. So it was about 4 months.
And they did acquire the company then and the existing systems, and you came over with the job, and
they bought everything and everyone. And they said, we're not buying you to gut you. We buy successful companies and try to help them do better. And they were very kind, they're great folks. They managed our team all the way down. And it was true. They didn't buy us and fire they didn't fire anybody. In fact, they really helped to update some systems that needed updating and to move us to their processing platform that saved us a ton of money because they had way better rates than we did because their volume was 100 times higher. And so it was cool. I learned a ton from those folks and getting to be there.
Yeah. So you stayed there for another 6-7 years. Part of that probably is your mindset is shifting and saying, I don't know that I want to do this for another 30, but What was it about being part of this new company? What's it feel like to be on the acquired side and the consolidated side that drew you to it for as long as it did?
Well, so at first it felt scary. I mean, I had plans to leave, I think, in the first 6 months. Um, because, you can say, oh, we're gonna buy you and keep everybody. We don't want to let anybody go. You can say that all day, but as soon as you own it, it's up to you and you can do whatever you want. So I was nervous for probably the first year, like waiting for the other shoe to drop. Once that kind of went away and I realized my job was not about to be taken from me, um, I saw it as a really neat opportunity to grow in a corporate environment that I'd never been in. Um, you know, there's so many stories of people that make it to a corporate environment, hate it, and leave. I wanted to try it out, and so um, it was fun. It really was. It was neat for a while. I will say, I came in to my dad's business with the goal of, finding working in the family business, making better money. But ultimately, I knew I wanted to help my dad into a retirement position. I had been interested in personal finance and investments since high school, uh, and had really taken. I wanted to pursue the CFP. In fact, I started pursuing the CFA charter after college while working for my dad, planning my next career move before he was ever even thinking of selling the business. So it's kind of always been in my mind of like, I wanted to get into financial planning and investments. Uh, the family business and the trajectory of the last 14 years of my life really were a different path that I just was on. I mean, it's just where God had me. Um, so post acquisition, I'm waiting for the industry to drop and kind of planning my exit. And I just kind of kept postponing it every year for like 7 years.
How were you growing? Talk to me about that, going from a company of 14, 15 people to a corporate environment. What specifically, just skill wise, relationship wise, what were you focused on that kept you engaged for as long as it did, knowing probably by this point, I am going to launch, I just don't know when?
Yeah, I'd say a couple things. First off, it's a lot of fun to present to people that you're not related to and to actually get to like pitch an idea or share a business update or talk through a financial report with somebody that doesn't share your last name. It's a lot of fun. It's a good kind of pressure and stress to be like, make sure your buttons are done and go up and know your stuff. So there's a pride that comes from the polish of a corporate environment that I think is really good. I'll also say I did have opportunities to just rub elbows with people who were smarter than me, older than me, better than me, more experienced than me, and that was always fun too. So it was neat to meet the folks and just see like how the real pros do it. Of project management, IT, marketing, business, like high level business structure, planning and cash flow forecasting and all that. So I didn't have too many in the room meetings, but I had a few and really did enjoy them. And then like when COVID hit, and a lot of, my day-to-day responsibilities and projects and everything kind of went on hold. I don't like being bored. So I had been waiting for a good time to start learning Microsoft Power BI because I was doing reporting and analytics for years at this point. And I had built this huge, big spreadsheet that was just a chaotic mess to everybody but me. I knew it like the back of my hand. But I needed a much better way of doing all that, right? Of doing the data management and the projecting and, so anyway, I knew that I needed to learn R or Python or something to like, but I hate coding, I didn't want to do that. So Power BI was a really cool opportunity to learn how to do data analytics and dashboarding and report management for, a large entity, a large organization with lots of data. And so I dove in head first. And within about 3-4 months, I learned the platform, built 2-3 reports, showed them to my boss, and he was floored. Showed him to his boss. Before you know it, I was tasked with doing like data management and reporting for the whole sector of like 12 companies, which was extremely difficult because nobody had data as good as we did at Core Solutions and our sister company. Nobody had data like us. So trying to get a report that looked as good as the one I made for us for them it was awful. But it taught me a lot about projects, managing people, and following up with them, because they don't really care about doing what you ask unless their boss tells them to.
I mean, it's a good challenge. Anybody can make a report with beautiful data, but the real world is
not anybody, Barrett.
It's easier to make a good report with beautiful data, but the real world is clients are going to bring you the worst data, and can you still make sense of it and turn it around? So yeah. And I know, not to put words in your mouth, but I know you've got 4 kids and almost 5 kids under the age of 10 also. So there had to be some of that. Just, it's nice to be able to shut this off at the end of the day. I know when I went back to being an employee in 2017, I went from working for myself from home in my pajamas for clients that were remote to shirt and tie, commute, clock in, clock out, all that kind of stuff. But I was in such a place at that time that I needed that ability to just shut it off and walk away from it at the end of the day. So was that also part of it for you at that time with babies being born?
Yeah. So, in 2017, we had our second in 18, and then 20, 22, and now 25. So, it's been a crazy 7 years, no doubt, 8, 9 years. But I will, I don't know, being in a family business, I don't know if there is shut it off and leave, because as long as your parent or your brother or your uncle or whatever is the owner, you kind of always think well, if something happened to him, it's coming to me. So you can't always just shut it off. I was an employee. I will say post-acquisition that definitely changed. And then even pre-acquisition, 2015, for a very short stint, I was an employee in a small family business, a different business. So I left my dad's company, trying to make a bit of a career move into more of a financial position at another local family business. And it was very, very difficult. But being a non-family employee in a family business, I saw that side of it too, and grew a lot of empathy for the people in my dad's company that didn't have our last name, because they came to work every day for the family. I don't know. So it's a whole different kind of dynamic. But yeah, post-acquisition, being able to just, turn it off and then go be dad and be a husband and be Nick. And that was very, very helpful.
So a lot of people go back to being an employees and they enjoy the life. They enjoy maybe the increased pay. They enjoy shutting it off. They enjoy the glamour that comes from being part of a corporation again, or a bigger company again. What caused you to start to shift? I know you always wanted to do financial planning, but what's shifting in your mind, and how are you surveying the times, and what caused you to go out and be self-employed again?
Oh man, I'd say in many ways it's the stories of people who've done it. Always appealed to me. I love
the founder mythos of the me against the world kind of thing.
I don't know. Just the more the XYPN radio, the interviews with other financial advisors who are helping clients, doing good work, making good money, and enjoying the lifestyle practice. That was it. It was them, maybe an assistant. Maybe they had 2 or 3 employees, a little boutique firm, but they were making good money. They're serving clients, doing work they love, and they're working 25 hours a week. It's hey, that sounds pretty nice. I would be fine to do that and to be able to devote my time to helping people navigate something that's typically incredibly stressful, money.
Yeah. I know you've shared watching your dad do it kind of wrong. Nothing against your dad, but just the American dream of work until you die. And then, oh, wow, there's nothing here for me to live out my last couple of years. How much of that is in the back of your head? Because I know that's a big part of what you want to focus on now with your financial planning firm? How much is that? Are you remembering those conversations? How much of that is remembering this deal motivating you?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I'll ever really grow past the first 10, 15 years of my career. So it's a huge part of the story. I'll share a quick story about, this is why I got into the business, because I watched this happen. So it was 2015, I guess, 16, somewhere pre-acquisition, even before he was planning on really selling. The business had grown, the cash flow was strong, and it was probably the best few years my dad had ever had in his life. And we were approached by a financial advisor, a financial planner, a fee-only guy who's a friend of mine from church at the time. And he said, hey, have you ever considered like a retirement plan, like a 401k or something for your dad's business? And at that time, I'm thinking like 401k. I didn't really know what a 401k was, but I knew it was like something more for like a big company. I was like, I don't really know. And he said, let's just talk. I'm glad to just draw you up a proposal, let you look at it, answer any questions you have. Well, he probably didn't realize what he was getting into, because I can come up with a lot of questions. And so many conversations and phone calls later, I presented this to my dad, the CPA, our accountant, and I think our somebody else. But anyway, I just presented this idea, and I was like, hey, I think this could be a really great way for us to save money. Now, the plan was predicated on my dad maxing out his limit, right? His annual additions limit of, I think at the time it was like 65,000 or something. Now it's like 70 or whatever. But that, or 59, whatever it was. The point was he was over 59 and a half, or over 55 rather, for over 50 for catch up. I'm getting confused. Point being, he could sock away a lot of money, and that was the huge linchpin for the whole plan to make sense. The owner gets to put a lot of money away. All the employees get a benefit. And here's the global tax savings, Mr. and Mrs. Client. Instead of writing a check to Uncle Sam for this amount, you're going to write a check to you, your employees, and your team. And doesn't that sound better? So the problem was it was not implemented fully, because he never actually contributed anything to the plan, because he just didn't know what he had to do. He thought somebody else was handling it. I guess the advisor thought I was handling it. I thought the accountant was handling it. No, the ball totally dropped. And so instead, all he did was just give money to his employees and, match, and struck a nice big check for the setup fee and all. Like, it was still great. It was great for all the employees. Everybody loved it. It was great for morale and retention and all that, but it didn't deliver the benefit it was supposed to the owner. And because of that, I mean, the whole case for the plan kind of ended up falling apart, and nobody really caught it. So it just sort of, happened, and it was just a part of the process that I don't think anybody ever really caught until I just caught it a few months ago. Even I reached out to my dad. I was like, hey, did you ever?
This just ever really recently after?
I literally just caught it, because I asked him, I was like, do you remember this? He's like, yeah. I said, did you ever roll that over? He's like, I never did it. Like, I never put anything in. Like, you never put anything in? Like, Dad, the whole plan was for you to
use your best earning years to maximize this thing. Yeah.
So that's part of the story I carry with me all the time. Little examples like that. I got 50 of those examples, Barrett, that I can give you. Just like, if somebody had been there with a financial planning mindset to say, hey, Mr. Garofalo, let's just make this one or two small changes so that you have a bit more of a plan, a little bit better of a structure. Something else we talked about before the show, Barrett, was like the post-sale income gap problem for entrepreneurs, right? So your company's making $5 million, you're taking home $500,000. You're going to sell it for like, whatever, 4x EBITDA, and so you're going to sell it for 2 or 3 million, and now you're going to have 80 or 120 grand a year in 4% income. What are you going to do? Because you just took a 70% pay cut from your 500 grand a year income down to 120. What are you going to do? Like, you're going to go start another company? You're going to work at Walmart? Shoring up that gap with a decade and a half of 15% savings can do a whole lot. But it takes planning in your 30s, 40s, 50s so that when you're in your 50s, 60s, and 70s, you don't run into that problem like so many other people do.
Yeah, I know. And you're in this to prevent other people from doing this. So, hindsight's 2020. But I also would think the number that your dad had in mind when he approached you and your brother would have been a lower number also had he been able to put money into retirement outside of the company. So this is why you do what you do in financial planning, why you work with small businesses. So talk now to somebody who is a seller who's listening to this, who thinks that their payday is an external acquisition or even an internal acquisition, and just talk to them about the both and approach for a minute.
Well, one thing we didn't even mention is the deal tax, right? And this isn't a tax conversation. I'm not a tax expert, but you are. The deal tax is a real problem because if you're going to have someone in your company buy you out, you're having to pay them wages that they're paying taxes on, that they're then going to turn around and pay you, that you're going to pay tax on to then give them the business. I mean, I've seen figures that the total deal tax can be as high as like 50%, even higher. And you can, do some discounts and stuff like that. But like working with an advisor is not just paying somebody $20,000 down the drain for some, PDF document. It's working with somebody that could save you hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe more. I mean, if your business is doing a few $1 million in revenue and you're hoping to sell it for a few $1 million, then your tax implication could be $1 million. If your business is doing 10 or 20 or $50 million, you can just add zeros to those numbers. So like, and we'll probably mention this in a second, but like, I see a lot of times that there's this reluctance to bring in outside advisors because we have an aversion to being sold. We think, especially like when you think taxes, you think advisor sort of relationship. You don't think, well, my CPA is trying to sell me something. When you think CFP, when you think financial advisor, you think, oh, you're trying to sell me A shares or some investment or something like that you're going to make a commission on, some insurance policy. There's just a life insurance play, isn't it? Like, no, not at all. Like my job is, to look out for you and to make sure that a deal is structured in such a way that you're not just leaving loads of money on the table. And that you're not also banking on that one number coming from an acquirer. Because, well, you mentioned this, but if my dad had a significant retirement savings cushion already socked away from the last 20 years of savings, the stress of the process would have been way less. The requirement of a certain number would have been much softer. Not to say that he shouldn't have still pushed for a good sale number, but his whole life wouldn't have been riding on it, right? If I talk about this a lot too, of like, you don't know what the economy is going to be like, or what the interest rate environment is going to be like, or what your health is going to be like, or what your family dynamic, or your business, or your biggest customer relationship is going to be like tomorrow, next quarter, next decade. So if you're planning on just building up a company and then just selling it because everything is always going up and to the right, that may not be the case. You may have a really hard economy year the year before you want to sell. So your profits may dip 25%, and then you're taking the haircut because you planned on selling it right after a down year, and the acquirer's like, well, your sales just went down 20%. So, there's so many factors in selling a business that have to go just right for it to go just right. And as many as we can reduce the pressure on with just some simple common sense planning moves, that's what I like to do. I like to keep things simple. It's not about making it complicated. It's just about simple common sense steps toward, removing some of the complexity, removing some of the pressure of what could be the biggest financial transaction of your life, selling business.
I mean, at a high level, it's diversifying that portfolio, right? And we, as entrepreneurs, are so bad at diversifying because it has taken 100% of our focus and energy in this company for as long as it has in order to make it sustainable. But now you're telling me take some of that money and don't reinvest it back into your company, put it somewhere else.
So to anybody who's like, oh, I just reinvest my profits, I would beg you, print off a list of your expenses from last quarter, from last year, and look at them and tell me how many of those you swear you couldn't live without. Because what I see way more often than not, Barrett, is not that you're reinvesting in capital equipment and hiring new salespeople and going into new territories. No, you're just
actively growing a company from investing.
We're just really good at spending a lot of money. That's just we're just really good at spending. And, maybe you don't need to do free lunch, twice a week. Maybe you don't need to, have the new equipment. Maybe you don't need, et cetera. Like, go through it, find it yourself. But like, chances are you could cut 10 to 15% out of your expenses tomorrow and be fine. And that's all money you can start saving today.
Just the thing about the economy shifting and your trade, whatever you're in, shifting too. This is why we do what we do. Why I do what I do at GW is I've had too many companies that say, "Oh, I'll just work here and then sell it someday," and they get to the end and they find out they're basically selling their equipment, on Facebook Marketplace, because that's the only people who are going to buy it. They stopped innovating. They just kept doing the work. They didn't change the technology. They didn't hire or weren't able to find people to come in and keep the business model actively engaged in their trade or their profession. And so they get to the end and you find out it's not worth anything. You've invested 30, 40 years into this and you've made good money along the way. But at the end of the day, that's what you have. You have the 30 or 40 years of cash flow. And if you're not putting that away into retirement, you get to the end and that company's not worth anything, then it's a shame. It breaks my heart. It makes me get up and do what I'm going to do.
I couldn't say it better.
Yeah. So
I really couldn't.
Well,
that's exactly why. That's why we do what we do, isn't it?
That's why we do what we do. Yeah.
Because, dude, there's something about the 10-15% savings rule. If you just follow that, you will solve so many of these problems. You won't have to, it won't all be hanging on how good of an economic engine did you really build in your business. Because if it's just a service company and you're really good at building decks or laying concrete or, whatever, doing taxes, that's a service. That's not an economic engine someone can buy for the cash flows and pay you a nice multiple on. And even if it is a great economic engine, you still have that income gap problem we talked about earlier of is it worth enough to pay you what you're currently making and continue the lifestyle that you have right now? Yeah, I really couldn't say it better. I'll stop trying to improve upon it.
That's all right. Nick, before we jump into the lightning round here, was there anything that you wanted to add that we haven't covered yet? Anything I missed?
This show is a show for entrepreneurs, right? It's a show for anybody in a business interested in selling or acquiring or having already been through that process. I would just say, you don't have to do this alone. Don't try. Entrepreneurship can be such a lonely journey. Don't make business exit planning a similarly lonely journey. You don't have to. So bring in advisors, who have been there, who know the journey, who know the ropes, and let them walk alongside you.
Yeah, this is the one for most businesses, for most people. This is the one time this transaction is going to happen in your life. But for someone like you, someone like me, this is one of 3, one of 10, one of 50, depending on, how many deals you do in a year that I might deal with. So, yeah, good stuff. All right. So you ready for the lightning round, Nick?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. Coffee or tea, and how do you like it?
Coffee with a little bit of heavy cream.
Okay. Pie or cake, and do you have a favorite kind?
Apple pie.
I think you just shared it, but what's a common belief among entrepreneurs that you would want to challenge?
Oh man, that your business has to run your life.
Embellish on that just a little bit.
If you got into business, it wasn't so that you could work 90 hours a week and at the expense of your family and friends.
What is your favorite holiday and why?
Oh man, that's a tough one. Toss up between Christmas and Easter. Christmas for all the family, kid reasons, but also, as a Christian, celebrating the birth of Jesus is only improved upon by celebrating his resurrection.
Are you a morning person or a night person? And do you have a favorite routine?
Morning all the way. Yeah, I love an early morning with, a cup of coffee, a good round of exercise, probably on my mountain bike. And hopefully hitting a couple hours of work before anybody else is even up.
What is one thing that you would want your successor to remember you for?
Man, in Proverbs it says what's attractive in a man is his kindness. And those are the words that my father-in-law told me when I asked if I could marry his daughter. And I hope more than anything, Barrett, that people would remember me for my kindness. I want to treat people the way I would want to be treated myself. And if I'm not kind, I'm not sure what else really matters.
Where are you finding creativity right now?
Different work environments.
How so?
I've worked at home for 5 years. So getting out to other workspaces helps me to clear my head, think differently.
Are you using like co-working spaces for that? Or are you just talking like Panera Bread, Starbucks, stuff like that?
Yeah, the Starbucks Panera isn't ideal. So mainly co-working spaces, or even like driving to a pretty place and sitting in the truck or outside and working.
Awesome. Love it. Used to do that myself. What do you have coming up that's got you really excited for this next year?
Well, we're expecting a baby in September, so that's pretty exciting.
All right. I'll take it. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
And Nick, where can people go to find out more about you?
Yes, you can go to openhandedwealth.com. You can check out my social links there. Instagram, Nick Makes Sense. I've got some free offers for anybody listening as well. Just go to openhandedwealth.com/resources. Got some really helpful handouts for building your first cash flow plan, for investing with purpose. I do biblically based investing for my clients, some tax saving ideas, business planning, stuff like that. So, but yeah, openhandedwealth.com is where you can find me. Feel free to reach out. I'd love to meet any of your listeners. But yeah, I do. Most everything I do runs through there.
Awesome. And do you also have a podcast, Nick?
I do. So you can find me 1 Degree by Nick Garofalo on anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Nick. I really appreciate you coming on and just sharing your passion for small business owners and sharing your story, walking alongside your dad through this whole thing. I appreciate it.
Barrett, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to be here. I appreciate you extending the invitation and giving me a chance to come on the show and tell my story. I appreciate and really love what you're doing. So keep up the good work. I think it's a great show and the great work that you're about.
Thank you so much. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode with Nick Garofalo as much as I have. Here on The Art of Succession, we have new episodes twice a month featuring business owners with their own succession stories. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, you can find that information in the description down below. If you enjoyed that episode, I ask that you please share it with someone else, and you'll probably enjoy this episode linked right here. And I want to thank you for watching The Art of Succession.